Welcome back to Old School Sports and our Out of the Park Baseball 24 playthrough of the New York Yankees. We are at opening day for the 2024 season. We've been general manager of the Yankees for a full year now, have definitely started to and made some pretty significant progress rebuilding the roster in our own image, getting rid of some of the more difficult contracts that the Yankees had on their books a year ago. As the season begins, just a few things to check in on. On the waiver wire, Brian Abreu was waived by the Astros. And honestly, with three of our pitchers who we thought were going to be on the major league roster on the injured list right now, I think we could definitely have a space for him in the bullpen. I'm not normally incredibly active on the waiver wire, but we're going to go ahead and put in a claim on Brian Abreu and see if maybe he can help our pitching staff. And towards the end of our last episode, when we were coming out of training camp and making our final cuts, I had decided to overrule manager Aaron Boone and move Michael King out of the closer role. And frequent commenter and regular viewer, Three Quarters Badger, kind of questioned me in the comments for the episode. And I think he makes a good point. King's got pretty incredible stuff, above average movement and control. He's got a wicked 4-pitch arsenal, which for a reliever is pretty impressive. And most importantly, over the course of his major league career, he's been a pretty good pitcher with a 1.12 ERA plus, a 76 FIP minus, and he's been better than his career marks in the last couple seasons. So willing to defer to the Badger and Aaron Boone on that. That moves Evan Phillips, who we did pick up in a trade in the offseason with the Dodgers, back into a middle relief role. We've got last year's closer, Jalen Beeks, Evan Phillips, who saved 47 games for the Dodgers, as the most likely people who we would swap in for King if he struggles. But hopefully that won't be the situation that we're dealing with. And the last kind of housekeeping item is more one of the little nitpicks I find with OOTP, since I spend a lot of time playing it. And I was checking my owner goals at the start of the season, and the only goal that we have for this 2024 season is to improve our team batting average. We were 14th last year, so hopefully with some of the changes we've made, that will be a realistic goal for us to achieve. But then I was also noticing that we've got this goal to increase attendance to 46,000 a game. And I was thinking to myself, in the new Yankee Stadium, that's pretty close to selling out every game. And then I took a look at the finances here and saw that we were on pace to maybe have 50,000 fans a game in Yankee Stadium this year, which was very confusing to me. So I went and checked on the ballpark, and they've got a capacity of over 52,000 for Yankee Stadium, which just makes no sense to me because the new park is 46,000 and change, and the new version of old Yankee Stadium that the Yankees played in from the mid to late 70s on, that I grew up with, had a capacity of around 57,000 most of the time. So a bit confusing to me where the capacity for Yankee Stadium ranks, or where they came up with that. I don't know if there's other teams that are just way off, but I mean, it made me feel a little better about the owner goal to get to 46,000, because apparently that's not actually a sellout in Yankee Stadium. But it seems like for OOTP to be in the 24th version of the game, having accurate stadium capacities would seem like pretty low-hanging fruit to get right. So maybe it's just some kind of disruption in the database. Maybe it's something that they'll fix with the first patch. Never really looked at that before, but it was a little annoying to find out, but not something that I'm going to let ruin the game for me. And moving on to the game, as the season gets ready, take a look at the preseason predictions. And our Yankees, who won the AL East last year, once again predicted to win the AL East with a American League best 95 wins. You can see the expectations are for Aaron Judge, Oswald Peraza, and the rookie Austin Wells to have big-time seasons, at least from the simulation that was run, and Carlos Rodon and Garrett Cole to also have nice seasons as far as the pitching staff. Tell you, if I could sign up for 67 games started by Cole and Rodon right now, which would mean neither of them has any serious injuries and probably no injuries at all for the season, I would definitely sign up for that right away. Taking a look at the National League, Padres expected to be the top team with 93 wins, so pressure on the Yankees, at least from the simulation that was run before the start of the season. Our 95 projected wins are expected to be number one in baseball, so definitely expect this team to contend for a title once again. We got bounced in the ALCS last season. Hopefully we can at least make a step forward this year and return the Yankees to the World Series for the first time in 15 years. And good news here, we started out the season with a 6-2 victory, so not quite as impressive, I guess, as the 5-0 victory the real Yankees had to start out the 2023 season yesterday, but still a nice performance to get the season underway against a division rival. And we did end up bringing on Bryan Abreu, so we are going to need to make a move with our pitching staff. A little surprised that a player at his age and with his arsenal of pitches and reputation was not selected by anyone else on the waiver wire, but we'll take it. And we're going to send the youngster Yoendrys Gomez back to Scranton. Made the team out of spring training with the injuries that we do have to the pitching staff, but he's one of the few players that we have on the team that does still have minor league options. So unfortunately, he will make room for Bryan Abreu. And manager Aaron Boone is going to put Abreu into a middle relief role for us. So interested in seeing how this season goes. And about a week into the season, Yankees are 4-3, game and a half behind the fast-starting Rays. Nestor Cortes' recovery is unclear. Hopefully he'll be ready in a week or two, but he is not bouncing back as quickly as we might have anticipated. Scott Efros, after missing all of last year, did start a rehab assignment a few days ago, and looks like could have Schmidt and Conley back, at least on a rehab assignment before the end of the month. And we'll see what happens with Cortes with that bicep strain that has kept him out of the last half of spring training and now impacting his regular season. And on a less interesting note, apparently we were just bounced from the server, so it doesn't look like we're logged in, but I'm not going to mess with the game while we're in the middle of it. It seems like everything is still working fine. 8-5 record, 2 games back. So we will just keep simming along here with these Yankees. And Clark Schmidt now ready to begin a rehab assignment as well. Would expect we'll probably just give him 2 starts down in Scranton, Wilkes-Barre, and then we'll bring him right up. Scott Efros, I don't know if he really has a role on the major league team at this point. He does have 3 years of minor league options yet, so we do have the ability at least to put him back down in the minors when his rehab assignment is over with without any major issues. And some more good news that unknown recovery time for Nestor Cortes didn't seem to be too long, so we'll send him on a rehab assignment as well. Obviously, very early stages of the season and a small sample size, but Rodon, Cole, and Severino, the 3 guys who we expected to be in our rotation, along with Schmidt and Cortes, are pitching very well. Whereas Wes Parsons and David Garcia have not been quite as effective for us in those fourth and fifth roles. So certainly will be nice to get back to the rotation we intended to have and the rotation that we had basically all of last season, hopefully in the next couple of weeks. And we just suffered our first significant injury of the regular season. Giancarlo Stanton, a fractured foot, out 3 to 4 weeks. Definitely struggling this year, hitting just a .55 with 4 homers and 71 at-bats. Will likely mean that we can get some more consistent playing time for the likes of Bellinger, Outman, and Wells. Right now, Bellinger and Outman are splitting time in center field. Wells getting a little bit more regular action. We want to make sure that the rookie gets as good an opportunity as possible. So we'll bring somebody up, likely an outfielder. Hopefully the fractured foot will not linger, and we'll have Stanton back by mid to late May. And we're actually not going to go for another outfielder. We're going to bring up Andres Chaparro, the first baseman, was one of our final cuts in camp this year. Hit .278 with 22 homers in AAA last year. Off to a solid start this year. .302 average and a couple of dingers in small sample size. 15 ribbies in 16 games. Don't know how much playing time he's going to get, but certainly a player who doesn't really have much left to prove at the AAA level. Our AAA roster is definitely getting very short of position players right now, though, so we've got to make a few other changes to fill that roster out with some injuries that we're having down in Scranton right now. And I guess my dream of having a pitching staff that was as healthy in terms of the starting rotation as last year's Yankees staff was for us is not going to be a reality. Just when I thought we were going to be getting Cortez and Schmidt back soon. Sevy, mild shoulder strain, day-to-day for 1 to 2 weeks. We are not going to mess around. We're going to put him right onto the IL. And even though Schmidt only had 1 start in AAA, and it was not a particularly effective start, allowing 9 hits over 4 1/3 innings. Hopefully it was enough to shake off the rust. We'll bring him right back up to the major league team, and presumably Booney will slot him in as the number 3 starter. Yep, that's where he is. So still going to have Parsons and or Garcia for the near term. One of them will likely be moving on from within the next week or so when we're ready to bring up Nestor, assuming that he doesn't suffer any setbacks down in AAA. And Tommy Conley's recovery is also unclear. Honestly, that's not as huge a setback as you might think. We'd like to get the starting pitchers back, but with the upgrades that we've made to the bullpen over this past offseason, picking up Abreu on waivers, trading for Joe Mantiply, trading for Evan Phillips. There's no guarantees that Conley's even going to be on the major league roster, so if we have to have him down in Scranton for a while on a long rehab assignment when he is finally healthy, that gives us 30 extra days of optionality to figure out what we might want to do with him if we don't think he's one of the 13 best pitchers in our organization. And after a pretty healthy 2023 for the Yankees, at least until the final week of the season or so when we lost Aaron Judge and then we lost Giancarlo Stanton during the first round of the playoffs. But other than that, the Yankees were healthy last year. But Austin Wells, the young rookie outfielder, .214 average, 3 homers in 84 at-bats, fractured his finger. He's going to be out for about 4 weeks. So a couple of outfielders who we expected to get a fair amount of power from on the injured list for the next 3 to 4 weeks. We're definitely going to be searching for some help in the outfield. As I mentioned, our AAA roster isn't as deep as I would normally want it to be here just in a year or 2 of this playthrough, and probably haven't spent enough time really focusing on building up the minors, given that this isn't going to be long-term let's play for the Yankees, but could definitely use a little more depth now, that's for sure. And we definitely don't have a lot of great bats in AAA at this point. We're going to promote the 25-year-old Elijah Dunham. Wouldn't say that he is a big-time prospect at this point. Going to turn 26 years old in just over a month. Has had decent years the last couple years in AA and AAA, hitting just a .194, but we just don't have a ton of options. You can see the other guys on our AAA team are former prospects, Estevan Florial, Jahmai Jones, and Jackie Bradley Jr., who we signed to a minor league contract a couple months ago at this point, just for organizational depth, and particularly if we needed a good defensive center fielder, if we had some injury issues with Bellinger or Outman. But they are two of our only healthy outfielders at this point, so no need for JB Jr. at this point. But Elijah Dunham is going to be called up to the bigs for the Yankees. And Sevy's recovery is also unclear, so we're having a lot of uncertainty with the healing rates of a lot of these injured players. Nestor Cortez has pitched a second time down in AAA. He's 0-2, has not looked particularly impressive so far. But as we've talked about, the two guys whose positions are in jeopardy, well, one of them hasn't pitched well in terms of Wes Parsons. Davy Garcia has actually been decent for us, and I think that could mean the end of Mr. Parsons with the Yankees. We had picked him up on the Rule 5 draft, thinking he could be some back end of the rotation depth for us, which he certainly has helped us with here over the first month of the season. Despite the 6.16 ERA, he hasn't actually won a game or lost a game. Part of that is that he's only pitched 19 innings in those 4 starts, so he's probably only qualified for a win once or twice, I would guess, in terms of getting 5 innings on the books. But I think he has served his purpose with the Yankees. We are going to go ahead, thank Wes Parsons, send him back to the Brewers, and it's time for Nestor Cortez to join the staff. We'll see where Boone wants to slot him in. He pushes Clark Schmidt down to the 4th starter. We'll keep Davy Garcia for the time being, and hopefully we can continue getting this team healthy. Can see the record stands at 13-8, and we are in first place now here as we near the end of April. So the Yankees have been playing better, and just as importantly, the Rays coming back to earth with a 3-7 record over their last 10. Think that this team can definitely do some damage once we get all our players back and healthy, but we're still probably several weeks away from being at that point. And we're on to the month of May. Yankees record is 14-9, still in first place, only averaging about 36.5 thousand fans a game. We've got 26 players on our team a game. So attendance down materially from last year at this point. Revenue also down materially. Teams in first place coming off of an ALCS appearance. We've got fan interest of over 100. Definitely has been disappointing that we haven't had higher attendance this year. That said, it's April in New York. The weather probably hasn't been great. Maybe that is factoring into what's happening in the new financial model. At least that's what I'm going to tell myself, because this certainly probably looks more like a attendance pattern that you might see in April when the weather is cold and rainy. Hopefully we will be selling out most of our games over the summer months when it's much warmer and nicer in New York. And we'll take a quick look at our team statistics. We're 3rd in the American League in runs scored, 1st in the AL in homers, despite those injuries to both Stanton and Wells. Pitching staff doing really well also, 2nd in the American League in runs allowed. So a real nice combination of a strong offense and a strong pitching staff so far. Defensive efficiency and zone rating also really good. Yankees off to a nice season with that 14-9 start in April, and according to our runs scored and runs against and the Pythagorean expectations, we should actually even be a game better than we have been at this point. And we've gotten to the point where we need to make a decision on Scott F. Ross. You can see it's been pretty rough going for him in the rehab assignment in Scranton. 14.54 ERA, 11 hits and 5 walks allowed over 4 1/3 innings. 3 of those hits allowed have been home runs. WAR of almost minus half a game at this point through 4 1/3 innings pitched. So pretty ugly performance by him. Certainly not going to be bringing him up to the major league roster. As we talked about, he does have 3 option years left. So we will just keep him down in the minors. And Tommy Conley finally healthy, so we are going to go and put him on a rehab assignment, see how he does down in Scranton, taking a look at our pitching staff. Starters have been doing a pretty good job, and quite honestly, there's only Clay Holmes among the relievers whose ERA at least is looking relatively sickly. You look at the profile of Clay Holmes, though, and I certainly don't think we're going to be in a rush to move on from him. Had a couple of really nice seasons for the Yankees in 2022 and 2023. Certainly going to give him more time. So there's no obvious player that we'd like to move on from. We will most likely be sending David Garcia down as soon as Severino is ready to come back, but there's not an obvious spot in the bullpen right now for Conley, so we'll see what he can do over the next several weeks down in AAA as he's hopefully getting back into shape and hopefully ready to contribute at some point for us. And we're going to get ready to do some scouting and preparation for the draft in a couple of months, but right now we've got the draft sorted on just the pitchers and just our scouts' potential ratings. And you can see there's only about 12, 15 pitchers who our scout even thinks has 2.5 star, only one pitcher with 3-star potential. And our scout, Damon Oppenheimer, is pretty darn good. So hopefully this is one of the things that they will fix as the early patches for OOTP 24 come out. But definitely does not look like the level of talent available in the draft is commensurate with where I would expect it to be. You know, even if it's Oppenheimer being picky, when we look at the OOTP Scouting Association, you can see there's still only 6 pitchers in the entire draft who have 3-star potential or higher. So definitely seems very light in terms of the talent. The batting situation a little bit better if you look at the OOTP Scouting Association, but certainly Damon Oppenheimer sees only about a dozen players with 3-star potential or higher. So I don't know if this is a change. I don't know if it is a bug, but the overall talent level available in the drafts doesn't seem quite what I had gotten used to in OOTP 23. Doesn't mean that it's right or wrong, but certainly I'd like to see a few more higher potential prospects being out there. And Severino, ready to come off of the IL now. We'll probably give him only 1 start down in AAA. He hasn't been banged up that long, but still, if there's any rust to shake off, would rather he do it in a AAA game than a major league game. And Stanton now getting healthy as well. We'll be careful and put him on a quick rehab assignment also. It's Friday the 17th. I would hope that by the end of the weekend, both Severino and Stanton are ready to join the major league club. And not having Severino and Stanton didn't hurt us too much. Had an 8-game winning streak. It was just snapped in the final game of the series against Pittsburgh. We took the first 2 games against them, but I think it's time now. We'll give Severino one more day down there. 138 pitches. I don't love. I don't also love, and I know it sounds like I'm being very critical of OOTP, and I know that we're still playing with a newly released version, but a pitcher on a rehab assignment from an injury throwing 138 pitches in AAA seems ridiculous to me. Obviously, I could put a pitch count on him, but it just seems like that's something that should be part of the game and is hopefully just a little oversight, because I don't really ever remember in OOTP 23 when I would be putting players on rehab assignments. It would seem a lot of times they'd go 67, 80 pitches. So I don't love that this is another little, I don't know if I want to call it a bug, but just something that I think hasn't been fully dialed in, that hopefully will be figured out over the next couple of weeks before I start my long-term sim in OOTP 24. And to make room for Stanton, we're going to send Elijah Dunham back down. He was 0 for 9 in a very small sample size. Certainly was not playing regularly, but Stanton will be back with the big club. Severino, we've got another day to decide. I think, Devi Garcia is the logical player to send down. He's out of option years, which is not optimal. There's a chance we could lose him. But I just don't know who else I would dump for him. Other option would be potentially Ron Marinaccio, who we picked up in the Rule 5 draft this year after we had traded him away, I believe in the deal that brought us Joe Mantiply. We traded away a right-handed reliever for a left-handed reliever, and obviously we had to give more than just Marinaccio to get Mantiply. But San Diego didn't protect him, so we picked him up in the Rule 5 draft. But he would be another guy if we decide that Devi Garcia is someone that we don't want to risk passing through waivers. But we've got one more day to think about that decision. And Devi Garcia's done a nice job for us. 2-1 record, 4.26 ERA, 7 starts. But we've got to open up a spot for Sevy, and I think that Marinaccio is a better major league pitcher right now than Devi Garcia is, so we can't actually send him to AAA without waiving and DFAing him, so that is what we are going to do. Hopefully nobody will pick him up and we'll be able to sneak him back down to AAA, but Sevy is back on the roster. And for the first time in this 2024 season, the Yankees, who are 27-14, are actually going to have the 5-man rotation that we intended throughout the offseason. So off to a great start without our pitching staff and our starting rotation being exactly the way that we wanted. And now hopefully things will get even better because we've got the pitchers already. And quite honestly, once Austin Wells is healthy, hopefully before the end of the week, we'll be back to the 26-man roster that we really intended to have. And in the least unexpected news of the day, setback for Austin Wells, so he won't be back as soon as we had hoped. Out going to be at least another 5 days. Definitely seem to have had some pretty bad luck this season with players whose injuries lingered for longer than anticipated. Hopefully it won't be too long till Wells is back, and we're getting to the point where we're about 2 weeks away from having to make a decision on Conley, who's only pitched in 3 games down in AAA so far. Hopefully he'll get a little more action before we are forced to decide one way or another what his future with the organization is. And Wells has played a couple games down in AAA now, 0 for 3, but hopefully enough to shake off the rust. He wasn't really gone that long. Andres Chaparro headed back. He only had 12 at-bats with a couple of hits while he was up, so certainly will be good to get him a little more consistent playing time down in AAA, and also to get Wells back into the lineup more regularly here at the major league level to see what one of the top prospects in our system can actually do with consistent playing time. Obviously had a monster season last year in AAA with a 306 average, 49 home runs. Certainly doesn't have anything left to prove in the minor leagues at this point. Hopefully we can get him a nice consistent run over the next couple of months and see if we can get that power stroke working in Yankee Stadium. And as we move to June, the Yankees continue to play incredibly well. 34-17 record, still obviously in first place. Garrett Cole, pitcher of the month for the American League in May, 5-0 record in 5 starts, 159 ERA and 48 strikeouts in 39 2/3 innings. On the season, 8-0 with a 2.06 ERA. So a great start to the year for Mr. Cole. And quite honestly, a pretty great start to the year for the Yankees. At 34-17, we are only up 2 games on the Rays in the AL East. They are 9-1 over their last 10 with an 8-game winning streak, so they're making up a little bit of ground on us. But the Yankees, the Rays, and the White Sox all off to pretty great starts in the AL. And the Cubbies, with a 39-12 record, off to an incredible start in the National League. The Dodgers, much less surprisingly than the Cubs, are also off to an excellent start. And with the calendar turning to June, we'll also do a quick check-in on our minor league system. Certainly not one of the best in baseball, ranked 25th right now. I think one of our owner goals is to get that improved over the next several seasons. Yeah, very important that we get into the top 6 by 2028. So a lot of work to do there. Now, to be fair, Peraza, Volpe, Trey Sweeney are all guys who were pretty big-time prospects who are in the majors now, along with Wells, who we've talked about. Jason Dominguez promoted to Double-A this year at the age of 21, and quite honestly, he looks like he's ready for Triple-A, hitting .321, 15 homers and 168 at-bats. Certainly looks like he could have a plus bat when he's fully developed, along with a pretty decent glove. So we're going to go ahead and promote him now. Randy Vasquez was a potential option to make the pitching staff since he's relatively young. Actually, he's not that young at 25 now. More importantly, since he has options, he ended up missing out on an opportunity to potentially make the pitching staff out of spring training. Really hasn't done much in AAA either last year or this year. Hopefully he could be a guy who could contribute to us as a spot starter down the line, but certainly going to want to see more from him. And that's really it for prospects around the top 100. Daniel Cuvée, who was our first-round draft pick last year, still in rookie ball, so his season hasn't started. Luis Serna was a popular trade target in the offseason. And then our other 2 top 200 prospects are the 2 guys that we picked up in international amateur free agency earlier this year. Arturo Castillo, 17-year-old, who's still at the international complex, and Simão Cantinho, who turned 19 a few months ago and is going to be starting the season with one of our DSL teams shortly. And the trip on the IL seemed to snap Austin Wells out of the little bit of a funk that he had started his major league career with. Was just named the American League Player of the Week. Pretty solid week, 625 average, 10 for 16 with a couple of homers, 5 ribbies, and 7 runs scored. Has his average up to 280 with 5 home runs in his first 100 at-bats of the season. And we've reached the point where we need to make a decision on Tommy Conley, and he's certainly not going to be a starter for us, and we've got our 5 starters from last season now all back together and healthy, so we're not going to make any changes there. And there's no obvious spot for him in the bullpen. The bullpen's having a real nice year also. Ron Marinaccio would be the guy that we would move on from. Could send him back from whence he came to the Padres. But he's got really good stuff with a nice three-pitch arsenal, pretty good movement on his pitches. His control's below average, but he has been a pretty solid reliever for the Yankees for the last several seasons, still making the major league minimum, make a little more than that next year after he goes through arbitration for the first time, most likely. But I look at, Conley's profile at this point. He's got better control, better movement, not nearly as good stuff as Marinaccio, and he's making close to $6 million a year in the final year of his contract. He's pitched better down in AAA. It's a tough call. Not sure exactly what kind of market there would be for Conley. Might as well just shop him around and see. I don't know that we really want to trade him, but at least figure out if there's a market for him if that is what we decide to do. Not a ton of demand, and it's players who are making some pretty big money, so perhaps that's a bit of a tell for us as to how his value is looked at. We don't really need to free up money, but if we kept 30% of his contract, does that change what the offers are for Mr. Conley? And it really doesn't materially. Again, we've got more than enough money, so it's not like we have to get out from under that contract. We can still make some improvements to the team down the stretch. So it's really just going to come down to the question of, do we want Conley or do we want Marinaccio on the team? And I think we've decided that we're going to move on from Conley. I shopped him again, keeping 60% of his contract, and there was still just way overpriced veterans for him, so there's just not a lot of demand there. So we're going to go and waive in DFA Mr. Conley. If someone grabs him from us, great. If not, hopefully he'll accept an assignment to stay in AAA with our organization, and we'll have him down there as some insurance for us. And another week in the books, another player of the week for the Yankees, Giancarlo Stanton, 435 with a couple of home runs. Not hitting for a great batting average, 226 average, does have 10 homers and 133 at-bats. Still has that real difficult contract, and you can see we've got a pending injury with him right after he got named Player of the Week, so that was not a nice surprise for me to see when I turned here to his status page, but the contract is pretty rough, still has a lot of years ahead. The only positive is that the number will be going down. We tried to trade him in the offseason, and even if we kept 75% of his contract, we also had to add in Anthony Volpe to get a deal done, which wasn't something we were willing to do. He's way overpaid. He's an older player who's breaking down. Bad contract for the Yankees that we'd like to get out of, but hopefully we can keep him healthy enough for the remainder of this year that we can get some level of power production out of him in the playoffs. Another interesting achievement here, obviously this just came to an end, but a 55-game on-base streak by Ron Judge, so that was nice to see. One shy, of course, of Joe DiMaggio's 56-game hitting streak, not that it was a hitting streak for Judge. And Stanton out with a ruptured MCL for 8 months, so his season is over. Just awful news for the Yankees. Going to have to figure out what we want to do with that contract. Obviously not an issue for this year. He fits under the contract fine, but we've been trying to get out from under him basically since we took this sim over a little less than a season and a half ago, and that contract and his physical status is not going to get any better as he turns 35 this offseason while rehabbing from that ruptured MCL. Not going to surprise me if he comes back with a wrecked status as far as his injury proneness. So clearly that's going to be something that we're going to need to look at in the offseason. If we could trade him right now, I would. I do have trading of injured players allowed, but not that I'm going to keep 80% of his contract, but if we retained 80% of his contract, you can see there's still no interest at all in him. So a brutal contract for the Yankees to be dealing with at this point of the sim, and we've still got many years to go. And we'll bring Elijah Dunham back up to the majors. Part of me thought about promoting Jason Dominguez real quickly, but he's still only 21 years old. You know, the Green Arrows say that he's ready, but I actually didn't promote him right away when I was talking about it about a week ago or week and a half ago in Game Time. Actually just promoted him a couple of days ago. He did have a monster game in his AAA debut, but would like to see a little more from him and hopefully a little more development before we bring him up. Also kind of feel that with Wells, Judge, Bellinger, and Outman, we kind of still have those outfield spots covered. And honestly, Cabrera's been spending some time out there too. Clearly, if I brought Dominguez up, I would ensure that he got some playing time, most likely over Outman and or Bellinger. But we'll give him a little more time to season at AAA before we have him make his major league debut. And with the injury to Stanton, we had been DHing Stanton against right-handed pitchers and DHing Aaron Judge against left-handed pitchers to try to keep those expensive and fragile veterans healthy. We're just going to play Judge at the DH all the time now. He's certainly a more than capable defensive outfielder, but given that fragile injury proneness, it's a bat that we just can't afford to lose in the lineup. Hitting .322 this year with 17 homers and 211 at-bats. Not quite the level of production that he's been at for the last couple years when he, of course, set the American League record with 62 and was chasing that amount last year when he got hurt with about a week and a half left to go in the season and ended up missing the entire playoffs. But pace is a little bit down from the torrid pace he put forth the last couple of seasons, but still having a excellent offensive year, and we just cannot afford to lose that bat, especially now that we know that Giancarlo Stanton is out for the season. And it's finally decision time on Tommy Conley, and you can see he refuses to be demoted. So at this point, we'll see what we can get, if anything, by keeping even 80% of his contract. I would prefer not to have any veterans around, but better to get something for him and not have all of that money on our books rather than nothing, if at all possible. And there are some options for us to think about at least. And we can get Dominic Smith from the Guardians, kind of an average-ish major league bat at this point in his career. Probably hasn't developed the way that Mets fans may have thought that he would a few seasons ago, but still a useful major league bat. Not much in terms of the glove, but with the fact that we do at this point have on the major league roster Elijah Dunham in the outfield, think that Dominic Smith at least gives us a better bat than that. So hopefully we can get the trade done. They're going to make us submit the offer. So I don't know if we'll hear right back. I guess that's the problem of playing without the make this work now button. Even though it was an offer that came to us, we've got to submit it rather than just complete it, even though when you look at it this way, it was an offer. So I'm hoping, I think sometimes they just accept these right away if you don't change anything. Nope, so we'll hear back from the GM shortly. but that isn't going to be soon enough for us. It's kind of a annoying little feature in the game, quite honestly, but it is what it is. I guess that's the issue with playing with hard mode for training. But I'm going to click that off right now and see if that allows me, because I mean, they made the offer to us. If I was in a situation where I could wait a day to get it done, I would. But that is not the situation that we're dealing with. I could get real creative and see if at 75% they still offer them to us. They don't. Oh, I'm looking at the wrong player, of course. You're all yelling at me for being an idiot for shopping Giancarlo Stanton rather than the player that we actually want to get rid of, who is Tommy Conley. So you can tell that it's been a long week at this point for me. Conley, shop him. See if maybe at 75% we can still get the same offer. And we can still get Dominic Smith. We're going to go ahead and I'm going to make it up to the 80% though, because that's what I was at before. But we're going to go ahead and complete the trade, bring Dominic Smith on to the Yankees. So Elijah Dunham, hopefully at some point you will get an opportunity to get a major league hit, but you are headed down to AAA, and we've got the veteran Dominic Smith to give us a bat that hopefully can replace some of what we're going to lose with Stanton's injury. Clark Schmidt waiting to hear the diagnosis on his injury. He's having another nice year for us. So the Yankees are playing some great baseball, but the injury situation this season has been a bit of a challenge. And it just got much more challenging. His Clark Schmidt out with a ruptured UCL for 9 to 10 months. So his season is also over, along with Giancarlo Stanton. He can join him on the 60-day IL. So in a span of 4 days, lose a starting pitcher and one of the top offensive players on our team to season-ending injuries. 42-20 record. Obviously, it's been an incredible season for the Yankees on the field. But, and you can see we're doing a lot of scouting of our organization right now. I guess the only positive thing is that Davy Garcia was not picked up by anybody and is available to come back up. Randy Vasquez, the youngster, just has not been really good this year. So I think we'll give Davy Garcia the chance. Scott Efros doesn't really have the stamina to be a starter, and he has been pretty bad down there. Yoendrys Gomez is a guy who we wouldn't mind seeing what he can do at the major league level at this point. The issue is just we don't have anyone really on the team with enough stamina to start to move into the rotation from the bullpen. So welcome back, Davy Garcia. And certainly as we get closer to the trade deadline in the month of July, there may be some incentive for us to look for some help for the starting rotation. It's been great so far this year, particularly the top two players, Rodon and Cole, who are the only two pitchers that have been healthy the whole year among the starters also. But although I kind of like Rodon, Cole, Severino, and Cortez, we've still got kind of our top four guys and the four that we'd be using most likely in the playoffs. If there is an opportunity to upgrade and bring on somebody who's not just better than Garcia, but could maybe slot in as a third starter for us ahead of maybe Severino and or Cortez, we've got a 42-20 record. We're obviously playing for this season. definitely something to think about over the next month and a half or so. And we'll give ourselves some time to think about that between now and our next episode. We'll call this one a finish here, but before we finish up, we'll check in on the stats of our players in addition to the team. You can see we're first in the AL in runs scored, first in the AL in runs allowed, so we're still underperforming our Pythagorean expectations a bit, but we've got the best offense in the AL and the best pitching staff in the AL. So it's been a really productive season so far, despite the injuries for the Yankees. Spent a lot of time looking at the pitching staff. Obviously, Rodon and Cole, both probably pretty strong prospects to be named an all-star. Michael King has done a real nice job as the closer. Thank you again, 3/4 Badger, for helping me make that decision and convincing me it was the right way to go. You can see he's also been upgraded in terms of his scouting report. We think he's a 5-star pitcher at this point. And he's done a fantastic job, 16 saves, 1.59 ERA, striking out around a batter and a half per inning. And you see a lot of big strikeout numbers among many of our bullpen players. The highest ERA is Mantiply, the lefty that we brought on with a 4.45 ERA to be a second lefty in the bullpen along with Beeks. None of the other players in the bullpen even have an ERA above 2.61. So been a very productive season for the Yankees pitching staff. Turning to the everyday players, Jose Trevino, the great defensive catcher, hitting 266. Miguel Amaya, who we picked up in the Rule 5 draft, hitting just a $182 and has a negative WAR. We do have Jake Rogers stashed in AAA since he still had options, and he's not exactly tearing it up down there with the 224 average, but does have 9 homers and a pretty good glove and is a proven major league player at this point. Maybe a situation where we need to move on from Amaya as we get further into the season. Anthony Rizzo hitting just 218 with 8 homers. I think it's getting increasingly unlikely that we'll pick up that team option next year, so that will leave us a hole at first base, but it will open up some money. We'll lose a captain if we move on from him, though, so not a decision that we're going to make lightly. Dominic Smith obviously just joined us, hasn't even played for us yet. Oswaldo Cabrera, utility infielder / outfielder, hitting 317 with 10 doubles and 5 homers and 164 at-bats. Anthony Volpe, his first full year in the majors, 234 average, 7 homers and 209 at-bats. Still certainly looks like he can develop into a pretty good hitting prospect. And that captain personality he has will be a nice supplement if and when we do decide to move on from Anthony Rizzo. But hasn't been quite as productive offensively as he was when he came up towards the later stages of last year. Hopefully he'll perform more like that going forward. Nick Maton, utility infielder, hitting 283 and 61 at-bats. Trey Sweeney has taken over for Josh Donaldson, quite honestly, with a 231 batting average, 12 homers and 208 at-bats, producing at a higher level than we got from Josh Donaldson last year at a much better price point. And Oswald Peraza, the young shortstop, having a really nice year, 292, 13 homers. You can see a 139 OPS plus, WAR of almost 3 on the season, stolen 20 bases, just a very productive player for us. Turning to the outfielders, James Outman and Cody Bellinger, the 2 guys that we brought on in the offseason. 246 with 5 homers for Outman, 224 with 6 homers for Bellinger. They do give us pretty decent defense in center field. Somewhat better than replacement level, but not incredible. Austin Wells, the youngster, 269, still stuck on 5 homers and 134 at-bats. So certainly not displaying the same power that he put up in AAA last year, but has been a decent major league player, 110 OPS plus, 112 WRC plus, and certainly will be an everyday player for us now with the injury issues with Giancarlo Stanton. And then Aaron Judge, who is still, I would think, a pretty strong candidate for a third straight MVP award. 326 average, 18 homers, 52 ribbies, 2.5 WAR here on June 14th. So take a quick look at the standings, and up 3.5 on the Blue Jays. Our 677 winning percentage is still not the best in baseball, as the Cubs are 46-17, so they're 3.5 games ahead of us in the standings for the best record in baseball. We're essentially tied with the Dodgers, although they've played 2 more games than us at this point. So going to be an interesting battle for the best record in baseball, and certainly with the injuries to Stanton and Schmidt, we aren't as strongly positioned for the roster that we'll have in the playoffs going forward. So we'll definitely be looking at some trade options as we get closer to the trade deadline in our next episode. If you've got thoughts on what we should do, would love to hear them in the comments down below. Until our next episode, thank you so much for watching, and hope you have a great day.